breadth and height. These are the three dimensions in which we live. We live in a 3D world where there are three spatial dimensions and there is one time dimension. This is what we call as space-time dimension, and these are the equations of these dimensions were understood by Einstein. He explained gravity as a curvature of space and time fabric itself, and the extension of these dimensions were done beyond 3D. This multidimensional concept is not new in science. This multidimensional concept is something that has always intrigued mankind, and some believe that we live in a higher dimension, but we perceive only 3 dimensions, and because our reality is based on our perception, we think we are in 3-dimensional world. But let's understand one basic factor about perception. This is a simple 3D object. It has width, it has length, and it has height. This is called a cuboid. But see what happens. When I pose this cuboid right in front of you, what do you see? You see the first face, the front face of this cuboid, which is a 2D shape. You do not see what is behind this cuboid. This handle and this chain is actually hidden from you. But a 4-dimensional person will be able to see this 3-dimensional object in its entirety. Seems complex, right? Let's try to understand once again. Let's imagine a flat plane. This is a plane without height. It has only length and breadth. So imagine a person living in this flat plane. He is a 2D creature. Let us now place different reality around him in 2-dimensional world. What does he see? What does he actually see? He will actually see only straight lines. The dimension can be 2D, but he observes the entire reality in 1D. That means what he is observing is a mere cross-section of the reality. We perceive the reality in 3 dimensions, then the reality should be more than this. There should be more possible dimensions, and what we see is only a perceived reality, or we call this as chaya or shadow. What is so important about shadow? Through shadow, we will be able to understand or figure out, or at least have an idea of any object that is of higher dimension. So if I have a 2D person trying to observe a 3D ball going across the 2D plane, what he will see is a straight line increasing and decreasing in size. This is his perceived reality for 3 dimensions. So a 3rd dimension being, when crosses the 2-dimensional boundary, the 2-dimensional being is only going to see a straight line, a perception, a shadow. All shadows are in 2 dimensions for a 3-dimensional object. We can definitely see the shadow being formed, or for any body on a flat ground will always have 2 dimensions. There is no 3rd dimension for shadow. So for every n-dimensional object, the shadow of that object will be in an n-1th dimension. A 3D object will have a shadow in 2D dimension. A 2D object will have a shadow in 1 dimension. And a 1 dimension will not have shadow at all. What does this show, and how can we correlate this with Jyotish? Let's try to find that out. Rahu and Ketu are in fact a mathematical point. They are a physical manifestation of mathematics that we see in the world of astrology. They are definitely called as shadow planets. Now, why the word shadow was given to them? Definitely because of eclipse and observation related to eclipse? Yes. But if we are talking and if we are trying to manifest the reality in 3 dimensions, we need to see that Rahu and Ketu are 1 dimension less. If they are shadow planets, they need to be in 2 dimensions and not in 1 dimension. So Rahu and Ketu defines the plane of our existence and not the 3D world in itself. That is why Rahu and Ketu do not have any physical manifestation or physical existence. They are the forces of nature which defines polarity, the north and the south pole. But this also means that if a Rahu and Ketu is with any other planet, or if we have to understand Rahu and Ketu, we have to understand a dimension lower than ours. And if we are able to understand a 3-dimensional world how does it relate with a two-dimensional world from the perspective of physics, we will understand how these two planets work when it goes with respect to any other planet. And that is why Rahu and Ketu reduces the dimension of a person, and that we say is the soul which descends into the path of darkness. Then how does a Ketu act as a moksha karaka planet? If you see Rahu and Ketu, if Rahu is something that tries to descend, Ketu has to work in opposite polarity. So Ketu, using the same dimensional force, pushes you from down to up, whereas the Rahu's force is from up to down, that is from 3D to 2D, whereas Ketu is going to push from 3D to 4D or above. So what will happen if a four-dimensional or fifth dimensional being tries to come in front of us? Will we ever be able to see that dimension? Actually, no. Because if I ask you to imagine a concept of a direction which is beyond length, breadth and height, which direction will you imagine? A direction that cannot be defined by the spatial coordinates, a direction that cannot be defined by the x, y and z axis, does not exist and our brain cannot interpret. But if by the sheer definition of perception of reality, the perception itself is one dimension less than the actual dimension, then we are not in a three-dimensional world. We are perceiving a 4D world through a 3D reality. The concept can be confusing, but if you give it enough thought, it raises few questions. Because just like the person in two-dimensional world will see a straight line increasing or decreasing in size, when a ball will cross the two-dimensional plane, the ball will appear as a higher being or a divine power. Because in reality, for a 2D world person, the line exists the way it exists, it never increases or decreases in size automatically. Doesn't it seem like the Ashtasiddhi, the Adima and the Laghima? That means the Ashtasiddhi can be power to manifest higher dimension within these dimensions, and the way we can transcend to higher dimensions. And the multidimensional theory is what we call as string theory. And that is why Rahu and Ketu is one dimension less, because if we can find out a relation between three-dimensional world and two-dimensional world, and how will a 2D world respond when a 3D being projects itself, a 2D world will always see a shadow of the 3D world. When we see or perceive a higher being, what we perceive is only a shadow in this world and not the real person itself, not the real being or the real energy, which is a much higher intellect, which is the universal consciousness. We don't see that. What we perceive is only a dimension that is capable of understanding, our brain is capable of understanding. What are we looking at can only be understood by experience and by reading of the Shastras, or if a guru gives you that power. Through tapasya and through continuous prayer, we can definitely connect to higher dimension. And one more fact, just like a 2D being person, two-dimensional person, do not know that a three-dimensional person is continuously watching him, a higher dimensional being will see our existence in its entirety. If you are a physics enthusiast, I am not a scientist, I don't claim to be, I am just a physics enthusiast. If you are a scientist, if you know if you are working on the quantum theory and string theory, please comment on this video and you share the video among those people who are from scientific bent, whereas this is a clear fusion between understanding of the Jyotish and the understanding of reality through physics. Because if we understand the correlation between Rahu, Ketu and our existence, we understand our correlation with the higher existence. That is why Rahu, Ketu are called karmic nodes, because if you do karma with respect to that node, because something you have to do, it's a question of understanding and exploration, you start reaching, because the correlation is same. These scientific phenomena are clearly explained in our Shastras. I will make a lot of videos for this. Short videos will come soon. If you like this multidimensional theory and the concept of Rahu and Ketu as n-1th dimension, do comment your suggestions. This is my first attempt into fusing science, Vedas, spirituality, scriptures and reality. I will do whatever best I can with whatever best knowledge I can gather and I know. If you have more suggestions, or if you want to correct me, or if you want to give more suggestions and inputs on these topics, if you have some interesting concepts, books, links, do give in the comment section so that it becomes available. So thank you guys for watching this confusing video. This is my first video. There may be some errors. I need your support, so please like, subscribe and share the video among family and friends, especially those who are science enthusiasts. And I hope you like this. and more such interesting videos coming soon. This is your channel Lifetime Soul, and this is your host Punneit. We'll meet in the next video. Till then, bye bye.